Welcome to the Titans of Industry show, and thanks for tuning in today. I've got a special guest for us today, a person I've got a lot of respect for, and he'll share with us his personal story and some of the issues he is researching at the moment and is involved with. Before we dive into this, I want to suggest to you to consider this interview as part of a series of educational sessions that we had conducted on the subject of cryptocurrencies with Adam Meister, Dave Scotese, Chris Klein, and the exclusive report we just released, including a cryptocurrency that is perfectly new. It's under the radar. 99% of investors have not heard about it, but heavy hitter millionaire Bitcoin investors are positioning at in this cryptocurrency right now, and that's on wealthresearchgroup.com/crypto profits. Today I'm here with the dollar vigilante, Jeff Berwick, an anarcho-capitalist and a freedom fighter, and he's a featured guest on CNBC. You probably saw him on Bloomberg, as well as running his own conference called Anarchapulco, obviously, and then Anarchist, the podcast. Jeff, how's life? How are you? Where are you?
I'm in Acapulco, Mexico, where our conference on Acapulco is held.
Perfect. So, Jeff, I want to first talk about opportunity and time management. You've done so much in your life, and I want to know how do you manage your day? You know, we're so passionate about life as entrepreneurs, and we're very involved with current events and what's going on in politics and the economy. How do you not get sucked in to, spending too much time online, on the internet, watching endless videos? How do you make sure you don't become a victim of your own ideals and principles and are free to pursue your interests in life on a more efficient level?
That's an interesting question, because I've actually been changing up everything in my life over the last few years, actually getting a lot better at a lot of things. I actually wasn't very good at many things before, and so you mentioned I did a lot of things. I don't know how I did a lot of them. Really, it's just basically just, when I was doing a lot of my companies, like my internet company, which became the largest internet company in Canada, or largest financial internet company in Canada, at stockhouse.com, still is the largest. I worked on that literally 18 hours a day for about 8 years straight, and so that's what I did. Yeah, well, that's what you really have to do as an entrepreneur. I've talked a bit about this with entrepreneurs a lot, that really, if you want to be successful, you can be successful, but it takes complete focus and complete effort, and it basically has to be your total focus, at least for the at the startup period of it. But when it comes to just being efficient and things like that, that's something I've been changing a lot recently. I've gotten into things like meditation and yoga, which I've found has added immensely to my productivity without actually having to work all that hard necessarily. So even when I'm doing all the things I'm even doing now, and if you look at all the things I'm doing, it looks like a lot, but I still spend hours a day watching YouTube videos. I'm very curious. I want to learn about as much as possible, but basically it's just nonstop, just keep going. And as you do these things for decades, you start to build up a group of people that are good at certain things and that you can trust, so you can start to really give them things, so you're not doing all the work yourself. That's a big part of it. And of course, as you have more experience, you just know how to do things faster and more efficient and just get things done.
Sure. So delegation obviously is a big part of getting more done and trusting other people to do the job. Look, I want to talk about the blockchain. I know there's so much talk about Bitcoin, but less people know about the platforms, the technology itself, and the broad ramifications and maybe the potential of the blockchain itself as a catalyst for bringing more prosperity and liberty to people worldwide. Can you talk a little bit about what is blockchain, and maybe even further on what are the global effects, positive ones, that this brings in to the picture?
Well, you're asking a lot. You're asking me to describe describe exactly how blockchain works, what Bitcoin is, how this affects the greater picture, but I'll try to do that. The blockchain, basically, for a lot of people out there, if you're around and you used to trade music on things like Napster, or if you even use things like torrent today, that's generally what the blockchain is. It's basically a bunch of information that is spread out over thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of computers. And in that sense, it's completely decentralized. And so in that sense, it can't really be stopped by anyone. And of course, the biggest people out there always trying to stop things are the government. They want to stop it for numerous reasons, partly because they want to rob everyone, extort them for taxes. Secondly, they don't like things to actually improve because then people will realize the government just gets in their way. So that's one of the main benefits of what you call the blockchain is, and that's what backs Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is essentially numbers, or essentially math that's on a blockchain. And that blockchain, as I pointed out, is just not really anywhere. It's actually everywhere all at once. So there is no Bitcoin CEO, there is no Bitcoin company, there is no Bitcoin head office. If there was, it already would have been shut down by the government because they want to stop it. And the reason they want to stop it is because money is very, very important. I don't know if anyone's ever noticed that, but it's quite important. They don't really teach you anything about it in the government indoctrination camps of your 12 years that they waste of putting you basically in a prison-like environment. They don't teach you anything about money, and that's on purpose because they don't want you to know anything about it. They don't want you to know what the Federal Reserve is. The Federal Reserve was an actual takeover of the United States that happened on December 23rd, 1913. It's been going on ever since. They keep acting like it's not a big scam or a big mafia, but it is. That's all it is. And when you have control of the money supply, and I think it was actually one of the Rothschilds, and the Rothschilds were essentially the people who came up with the idea of central banking and started to do it, and they still control most of the central banks in the world today. And I believe they said something along the lines of, I don't care who makes the laws as long as I control the money. And that's essentially their plan and their idea, and that's how it works. That's how they control most governments in the world today, because they control the money supply, because they control most of the central banks. And so because of that, they don't want anyone to be able to distribute their own money, especially a money that's much better than the current money we have today, which is absolutely garbage. The US dollar Federal Reserve note, which is actually what it's called, that's what's written on it. It also has a pyramid with an all-seeing eye on the back of it. No one seems to notice that. Very brainwashed population apparently don't even notice what's on their so-called money, but it's terrible money. It's basically a piece of paper with dead criminals printed on it that people accept in transaction for things of value, which is absolutely insane. But of course, under government law, which is ridiculous and should be removed government altogether, people are forced by gunpoint to accept these things and actually are forced to pay a lot of the money they make in income tax and things like that to the government as part of their extortion. And that's actually the only thing that really gives it any real value. So when a new money comes out like Bitcoin, which is far better, it's not centralized, no one can control it, no one can print up as much of it as you want, which is very important because inflation is actually what destroys economies and what's actually destroying the US economy right now and every economy in the world. And when money like that comes out, they want to get rid of it, but they can't because it's not really anywhere. That's the beauty of what Bitcoin is, and that's why it's risen from, when I found out about it in 2011, it was $3. It's currently over $1,000, and it could go to as high as $1 million if it were to actually be used by everyone in the world. But we'll see if that happens. That's a long ways from happening. But no, Bitcoin and blockchain is an absolute evolution, not a revolution, because a revolution, revolve, is to go back to where you came from. We don't want to do that. We don't want to go back to any of these government or central bank systems. We want to evolve past this, and we are with things like Bitcoin.
Interesting. Ray Dalio, who I've followed since I began investing at the age of 16, he is now working on a new theme, an investment theme, and he basically told clients worldwide that populism and impatience of the lower classes, in Europe and the United States, everywhere else, people that are in their 20s and 30s and are not connecting to the financial boom that's going on in the marketplace. They're becoming really impatient, and he compares populism today to populism in the 20s and 30s in Europe, and he says that there could be a grave danger to the social order. Do you agree with this, or is this too gloom and doom?
It's an interesting concept. I can't see. I don't know. I'm not sure what happened to the social order necessarily in the 20s and 30s that the young people did necessarily, unless you're talking about. I'm not really sure what he's even really saying, but definitely there's going to be massive changes happening. Absolutely. And of course, the younger people, if you're a baby born in the U.S. today, you're born with $250,000 of U.S. government debt and liabilities overhanging you. You're already bankrupt. You actually have no chance, almost no chance to make a living as an American if you're born in the U.S. So if anyone out there was thinking of having a kid in the U.S., do not do that. Do not get them a U.S. citizenship. That thing's over. It's done. And so the younger people, even the 20-year-olds and things like that, and they've been so brainwashed. It's really sad to see how brainwashed they've been. Of course, they go through their 12 years of memorizing useless facts and actually false information in the government indoctrination camps. They go home, they turn on the television, and it's called programming for a reason. And it's literally just brainwashing. It's propaganda. It's not even close to real information. It's giving them all kinds of bad information. So they have all this, and then they're told, of course, well, after you're done your 12 years of being in prison as a kid, you can pay for 4 more years. It's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then you'll get a piece of paper like a Bachelor of Arts degree, which will be absolutely useless, and then you can go work at Subway, and you'll have about $100,000 worth of student debt, and then, of course, that $250,000 of federal government debt and liabilities I already talked about. So you're already about $350,000 in debt there. So it's already done. So yeah, there's going to be a backlash from it. I think the young people in places like the U.S. today are so dumbed down and so all they do is play video games. They have no ability to do anything. They're useless. They just sit in their basement. They're so stupid. You look at the colleges. Like, if you want to find really and unbelievably like science experiment dumb people, go to any college in the U.S. Like, they're not even. There's just no brain cells actually working in their heads, apparently. They're just memorizing what they're told to memorize, unfortunately. So I don't know if there's going to be like a in the streets bloody revolution over this. I think the kids today are just too stupid and too lazy to understand what's been done to them. But so there's going to definitely be a change. This whole system is going to fall apart. And then people are going to have to actually find something productive to do for the first time in their lives, most people. And that'll be the interesting part. And we'll see what happens. But that's why I stay away mostly from places like the U.S., because it's going to be a real mess for the next 5 or 10 years, maybe longer. Could be shorter if the government if they get rid of the government and the central bank immediately, that you could see it do well again within a year or two. But it's going to be a mess in the transition.
So just an off-topic question. You never visit the United States anymore?
I try not to. I go every now and then. I try to avoid it. A funny story, I go to Dominican Republic quite a bit, and I spend most of my time in Mexico. And I would usually go through Havana, Cuba, instead of going through the U.S. on my way to the Dominican, because there is no direct flight, just because I found that Cuba was less communist and less a horrible government in Cuba, which is pretty sad to say because it's absolutely horrible in Cuba. But that's really how bad the U.S. is getting to me right now. So I just avoid it as much as I can.
Understood. I want to get your take on the marijuana legalization event and process that's going on in the United States right now and worldwide. What do you think of it?
Well, I think it's great that they're slowly getting rid of the war on drugs. The war on drugs has been one of the most heinous, anti-human, anti-freedom things in the last 50 years. Of course, it was started up by Richard Nixon, interesting guy to start it all up. And the actual face of the war on drugs originally was Elvis Presley. That was interesting. Guy who died on massive amounts of chemicals that were given to him by doctors, which are called drugs. And actually, those are the worst drugs. And that's just been heinous. It's been one of the worst things in the world for the last 50 years. Chasing people. You have in the U.S. now just families just having their houses broken into in the middle of the night by SWAT teams and then gangs just with guns and coming in with flash bang grenades and all that, because they might have a plant in their house. And that plant, by the way, marijuana, actually makes you think about things. That's why they don't want people to do it. They'd rather you take the U.S. government sanctioned drug, which is one of the worst drugs in the world, alcohol, and be really dumb and violent. That's what they prefer over a drug, a so-called drug. It's just a plant called marijuana, which is really healthy and actually cures cancer. They don't want you to smoke or ingest that because it actually makes you think a little bit. And when you think a little bit, you realize that the government's a big scam and you don't want them anymore. So it's great that they're starting to move in that direction. It's been incredibly slow. We've seen all these states in the U.S. that have sort of said they're going to decriminalize or legalize it. I prefer decriminalize, of course. I don't want the government to tax it. The government shouldn't tax anything. Taxation is theft, of course. We're seeing that, but now we have, of course, the new, I call him Donald Big Government Trump, because he hasn't reduced the size of government 1 cent since he's been in and has no plans to. So he's just no different than Bush, no different than Obama, just increasing the size of government just in different ways. And his way is to actually go back to the war on drugs, which was almost gone. And everything was better. If you look at Colorado, where they actually decriminalized marijuana, the economy increased massively. Crime stats went down massively, obviously. All this stuff is obvious if you know what you're talking about, and now he's got his guy in there who thinks he's got to have a war on marijuana. So it's absolute insanity. Everything in the U.S. is insanity. It's just nothing but violence and theft and extortion now, and that's why I spent a lot of time in Mexico, where it's a lot freer and a lot safer.
When did this process start with you, Jeff, where you became so anti-government, or should I say so passionate about becoming an anarchist?
I'm not so much anti-government. Government just is an unnecessary evil. It shouldn't exist. I'm just pro-freedom. All of us as individuals, as humans, should be free. I don't know if that's a crazy idea. I don't know if, I know in the U.S. now it sounds nuts to actually believe in freedom, like true freedom, not what they have in U.S. But it was actually, I thought about it when I was younger, and I think I've always been an anarchist, or I think everyone's born an anarchist. Like, no one comes out and is a baby and says, hey, we should have socialized healthcare and extort people for it. Like, no one does that. That's something that comes along a lot later through brainwashing and bad ideas, essentially. But we're all born anarchists, and I essentially just remained one most of my life. And I didn't really realize I was one until I met Doug Casey around 2002, and he told me over dinner that I was an anarchist. And I didn't even know what the word meant. I actually thought it meant bomb throwers, those people who go and riot and break windows at Starbucks and stuff. But those are actually what they call themselves anarcho-communists, but they're basically just communists. They're not really anarchists. So I guess I've been it my whole life and actually realized what the word meant when I was around around 30 years old.
Understood. Look, Jeff, I want to get your take on competing cryptocurrencies, and which could be explosive in 2017. I know you research cryptocurrencies very thoroughly. Do you see anything that's very exciting right now that people should research, take a look at, conduct their due diligence on?
There's many. I've been talking about what they call the altcoins, alternative coins to Bitcoin, which is by far the biggest. There's nothing that even comes close to the size of Bitcoin, or the just the sturdiness or the reliability of Bitcoin. It's just massive at 20 billion. It's less than 20 now, but around $16 billion market cap right now. There's a number. I've actually featured a number of them in our newsletter at the Dollar Vigilante, and if people want to find out about that, just go to dollarvigilante.com/subscribe. We've featured about a year ago, I featured Ethereum. I've been following that for years, actually, but I didn't feature it for the first time to our subscribers till about January of last year, when it was around $2. It's currently around $50. I then featured Monero a few months later, and it rose about 500% within a few weeks. I recently, just about a month and a half ago, featured Dash, which actually I think has real potential, more than Monero at this point. But they all have different values. They're all different. These aren't just Bitcoin duplicates. They have different functionalities and different capabilities than Bitcoin, and that's what makes them so exciting. So I featured Dash about 2 months ago, and it was around $17 at the time. It since went up to as high as $120, currently at around $80. And actually, I told people to start selling around 110. I thought it got too high. I'll tell subscribers when to buy back in. I think it's getting fairly close now on Dash. But yeah, there's a few. I also like Steam. Steam is very interesting. It's the first blockchain-backed social media network, which can compete with sites like Reddit and Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and all these sort of things. Maybe not Instagram, but other social media like it. And it's backed with a coin, and you actually get paid to post on it. So I've been posting on there for about a year. It's called steemit.com. I've made actually over $100,000 as the price of Steem has gone down dramatically, and I never sold any. It's only worth about $15,000 at this point, but that's still money I made just posting on the site. And then many other people I know have made hundreds or thousands of dollars posting on the site, and you can do that right now going to steemit.com. So that's interesting. That could take off. Absolutely. It's what we're seeing with the censorship of social media sites, so you can't actually really censor it. So that could have huge benefits. And once people find out that they can actually make money posting on it, whereas on Facebook they're actually, they don't make any money, and they're just being targeted with advertising constantly. They can actually go to a different site like Steemit and do well. That one I started talking about when it was around $2, but I said do not buy it. It was way too high at that moment in time, in my opinion. It then went all the way down to 7 cents. When it was around 20 cents, before it hit 7 cents, I said that it looked like it was starting to become a buy. It's now over 20 cents, I believe. So it's actually been in positive territory. That's a really speculative one, but a very interesting test case. There's so many test cases for blockchain. There's things like MadeSafe coin, which actually could put the entire internet on the blockchain. We're talking crazy levels of stuff here for decentralizing everything, and you can make absolute fortunes if that actually happens. Bitcoin's a good example. I got into that in 2011 when it was $3, now over $1,000. So this is a whole new space that I've been on the forefront of covering. No one's even come close. There's so many other financial newsletters out there. They don't even know what Bitcoin is yet, or if they talk about it, they just say, "Oh, that's a scam or something." They have no idea. These guys are just gone. They're just too stupid or too old. No offense to them, but if you don't know it by now, you really shouldn't be in the financial business. This is an evolution in financial banking, money and banking. And if you don't even know what's going on yet, you're too far gone. You should just retire. But yeah, there's tons of altcoins. We talk about a lot of them in the newsletter at the Dollar Vigilante, and all the time in our videos on YouTube and stuff like that.
Jeff, Leslie, I want to talk about your take on the next 4 years of the Trump candidacy.
Well, we're what, 2 months in, 3 months in now. Before he got elected, I actually said, or selected, because these aren't elections. These are just completely rigged all the way through. This has been that way for a long time. People need to realize this. You're basically, as an American, and most other countries in the world, but the U.S. is really bad. You're living in a complete controlled. You're a slave. You're completely enslaved. It's not much different than living in North Korea. All your information is propaganda, except for what you can get through the internet, and they're trying to shut that down as much as possible with their fake news and all that kind of stuff, and all kinds of censorship things they're doing. Yeah, you really need to realize that. But with Trump, I actually said about a month before the selection that he would be selected, and he was. And I figured that out after he went to a massive Jesuit get-together with Hillary Clinton. Both of them went, and this is just a few weeks before the election. And I figured at that point that they were going to give the selection to Trump. He was chosen. He's old friends with the Clintons. He's basically not much different than any of these other guys, Ben Bush or Obama. These are basically all the elites. A lot of his money's coming from this whole system. He's been a Jesuit, which is a very high-level secret society that is involved at the highest levels. And of course, the Roman Catholic Church is run by a Jesuit. The U.S. government now run by a Jesuit. The Jesuits are everywhere. They've been kicked out of numerous countries because of the really evil stuff they do. But most people don't know about that because they don't teach it in your government schools or in the television programming at night. But I said he wasn't going to be much different at all. If he was going to be much different than Obama or Bush, it was going to be worse. And I think we're already seeing that with the wars. He's gone absolutely insane. We're now seeing, and they're not even wars, they're just blowing up kids and children and women and children all over the world. He just 200 just the other day in Iraq. He's just going to go nuts, just blowing stuff up. It's absolutely heinous, total criminal, total murderer, and it's not going to get any better. And the one thing I think is going to get much worse is the police state, which he actually talked all about during the debates. He said he was going to make it worse. He said he wanted stop and frisk like they had in New York. He wants that everywhere in the U.S. So just walking down the street, papers, please. Anyone remember that from 1940s or Germany? Anyone remember that at all? No, that's what's going to happen. And he's building a wall, which I think eventually is going to keep Americans in. Ron Paul even said that. Yeah, it's just going to get worse and worse, and we'll see what happens.
Jeff, thank you very much for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
How can people plug in and know more about what you're doing?
Just check out dollarvigilante.com. If you put in your email there, we actually send out a email blog almost every day talking about all these sort of issues and many other issues. We're also on YouTube, so if you just type in the Dollar Vigilante on YouTube, just subscribe to our channel, and we put out pretty much a video every day on there as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much for coming on.
My pleasure.